I predict a Duke's victory.
Welcome to Crush Fantasy Football Podcast with your host, James, and Mr. Michael Dolan. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Episode 10, baby. Double digits. Can't even fit this many fingers on the screen. But I'm good. So, it was fun yesterday. You and I and a bunch of other friends, just went to a little dog park brewery. So my little guy Snoop back here had a grand old time. Maybe fell in love. Who knows? He was certainly showing it.
What Dolan's trying to say is Snoop was humping all the dogs.
Two dogs.
Two dogs many times.
Well, one dog was humping him back, in fairness.
He was having a lot of fun. Kind of like the fun we're going to have on the Crush Fantasy podcast today, right?
I don't know what kind of fun you're talking about.
I'm excited to be here, right? Excited to get the show going. So as always, we're going to start with our Take Montezuma, sponsored by Soiree Season. If you're ready for the new age wedding registry, the wedding registry of the future, some would say, check out Soiree Season, promo code CrushFF. All right, Dolan, you always fire us up first. So I'm gonna start.
I like it.
Today's Take Montezuma. All right, so my hot take is I think it's a good thing when kids ask for autographs from professional athletes and they get turned down. So everyone thinks it's super sad, right? It's like, oh my God, this poor little 5-year-old standing out there asking for an autograph. And the recent example I saw was like Joe Burrow walked by him. I think it's a good thing. I think there's a lot of evidence that society is getting a little soft, a participation trophy generation, people are saying. And so if kids...
You're looking at some evidence right here on the screen.
Yeah, you didn't have to say that about yourself, Dolan. But yeah, so I think when athletes say no, I think it builds character. I think it encourages the youth to go and try again, to keep standing there, to keep asking, and it builds perseverance. So I actually think it's a good thing.
Not just limited to athletes, though. I'm assuming this applies to
everything.
Leo DiCaprio is walking down the street. Same rule applies?
When people start asking you and me for autographs very soon here, I think we should just walk by.
I've never said no to an autograph personally. That's just the kind of guy.
That is. There's a second part of my hot take. I think this culture of canceling athletes or demeaning athletes for the 5-second video clip of an athlete walking by a kid and they don't sign their autograph and everyone just shits on the athlete, we need to stop that. You don't know what's going on in this person's life. You don't know how many autographs they signed that day. You don't know what meeting they have to be at. You don't know how much time they've spent with the fans. And so a 5-second video out of context to dunk on them on the internet has to go.
I'm with you. The first thing that popped into my mind when I saw that Burrow clip was like,
that's the one that, yeah.
Why are people getting so upset about this? Like sometimes people just have a bad day. I have those days where all I want to do is go home and just like shut myself down and lock myself in a room by myself. And I get that we have to hold, role models to a higher standard, but I totally respect and empathize that like sometimes you just need your alone time. And also, who knows, like before that video, those kids could have been talking shit or something and like throwing an egg at him.
Yeah.
You never see the full context. You only see one side of the story.
There's not enough time in the day to sign. If you just sat there and signed everyone's autograph who wants your autograph, right? You have to pick and choose.
I mean, I have plenty of time to do that, but that's just me. There's not enough people wanting my autograph.
But let's encourage the people out there. If you're listening to this, ask Dolan for his autograph.
I can't wait till our 13 subscribers start. I got 13 in me.
Yeah, well, 13's quickly becoming 15 after episode 10.
That's a good point. 15 and counting.
All right, that's my hot take.
All right, you straddled the fence on football, non-football on that one, so I think that gives me free reign to go in either direction.
Yeah, you can go either direction.
I'm gonna go non-football on this one. I don't think this is that hot of a take. I think you're actually on my side with this one, but I think enough people have this opinion that ice cream is a seasonal food and it's only a hot weather food, not a year-round food. And to me, that's crazy. Ice cream is like the best dessert ever. I don't care if I walk inside coming from a snowstorm. let me heat up a little bit, and an hour later, I'm still going to want to eat some ice cream. It's probably the best dessert of all time. It's versatile. You get so many flavor options. Maybe that was my hot take, that ice cream is the best dessert of all time. But I think it's just absolutely crazy that a little cold weather scares you away from some frozen food.
You're getting no pushback from me here. People who think that's a hot take don't understand. They don't get it. Ice cream is magical. Ice cream in the summer is magical. Ice cream in the fall is magical. Ice cream in the winter is magical. Ice cream on top of a brownie is like extra magical. Ice cream in between two chocolate chip cookies is like extremely magical. And so, yeah, no pushback from me. It would be interesting to see the actual like how good are Dairy Queens? What's like Dairy Queen's EPS in the wintertime, right? Like same store sales, are they like they're probably down, but how far down? And so I don't know how. I think everyone might disagree with that because it's incredible.
I hope so. I hope people are collectively understand this as well. I've heard it too many times not to at least get it off my chest and let the world know.
So here's the question: is there a change in your ice cream philosophy or order in the summer versus winter?
Nope. I may be slightly more likely to get a brownie sundae or something like that to get a little heat under my ice cream if I'm, actively cold. But no,
See,
I still
here's
like
where I think it changes. I think waffle cone is less likely in the winter. Just because one, you don't like cold hands in a waffle cone is asking a lot, and then gloves in a waffle cone just seems stupid, right? So I think cone is more of a summer mechanism, whereas like maybe a milkshake or a bowl or a cookie sandwich is like eating at the house is a winter mechanism. So
okay, that's fair. I will say I find myself going out for ice cream less in the winter. Maybe that's just me personally.
Maybe that's it, yeah.
But I do eat a lot of ice cream at home. That's maybe where it comes from. So it doesn't bother me as much.
All right. Take Montezuma again. Check out Soiree Season. We're going to get a link in the show notes very soon here. We're working with our contact over there. Okay. So what we're doing on today's episode, pretty straightforward. We both put our receivers 1 through 10 for the 2025 redraft fantasy season. So we're going to kind of deep dive each of them. Dolan, if you want to kick us off with your number 10.
Yeah. So I think when I went through this exercise and you and I were talking about this, so I know we're on the same page here. It seems there's a pretty clear-cut top 10. So I actually didn't have a super difficult time coming up with these 10 names. It was really just where on the list they fell. But the number 10 name on my list is actually Drake London. And so I think the ceiling case for London, and one of the reasons he could easily surpass this wide receiver 10 ranking, is all signs point to him just having an absolutely massive target share. I think the tail end of the season in those games he played with Penix clearly loved hyper targeting him. I could very easily see London being a top 3 target earner in the league. I think the offense is good enough. It's probably not going to be elite, but I think it'll give enough opportunity for touchdowns and red zone scoring. So I really like where I have London. I think the reason I have him a little lower is because I do think there are just some more proven names that I had a hard time putting him above. And so I think he's tiered pretty similarly. Basically from like 4 through 10, I would say are all relatively interchangeable in my book. But I do think the floor is just that, hey, it was a small sample size with Penix, and it is possible that Penix isn't that great. And so there are still some questions for me there. And I don't think he has quite as much like big play potential to be the guy who just, all of a sudden he takes a slant 60 yards to the house and accumulate points in bunches in those ways. But I think he's going to catch a ton of balls and have his fair shot at a lot of end zone targets. What do you think? Where do you have London ranked?
So I have London at 7, and I honestly tried to get him higher. Is how much I love Drake London this year. So he made the leap. I think we're beyond the point of he's a stud wide receiver, right? So he was 5th in total points last year. And like you, the reason I have him 7th is the volume I think has a chance to earn the most targets in the entire league. Last year, the Falcons offense was 6th in total plays run. So they are going to kind of move the ball, right? And that's just going to lead to more looks, and especially end zone looks for Drake London. I think he's a good bet to be in the top 5 in targets in the NFL.
Yeah. I think we are very much on the same page there, and it's picking straws here a little bit, figuring out where within that top 10 they rank. But who'd you have at number 10?
Puka Nakua is my number 10. And to be quite honest with you, I think I would have him number 3 if not for Stafford's back. 2023, 6 in fantasy points per game. Last year, he was second in fantasy points per game. 30% target share, first in yards per route run at over 4, which is just a stupid number. He came out of the gate, right? His rookie season was awesome. And so I think he's proven the talent, even though with the draft capital, people kind of still are hesitant. And I thought the only floor case before the Stafford injury was Davante Adams taking away some of his target. But yeah, honestly, I was ready to put him at 3 before the Stafford injury. So what do you think of Puka?
The Stafford thing definitely bumped him down a few pegs for me. I would not have had him as high as you would have, assuming a healthy Stafford, though. I think the highest I could probably get with Puka is like 7. I still think Davante Adams is that dude. And, yes, we've seen Nakua thrive with Cooper Kupp, but a lot of his overall fantasy production did come in games when Kupp was out. I still think Nakua is going to dominate. I think he has, such a high floor because of how talented he is and how good of a coach Sean McVay is. And I don't know. It still seems like they're being cautious with Stafford. A month's a long time, and that's how. I guess it's less than a month now. It's like 3 weeks until week 1. But yeah, I'm a little lower on Nakua than consensus consistently, and then I think this news just made it a little easier for me to pump him down when I do have all these guys in a similar tier.
If we know we're getting half Stafford, let's say half Jimmy G the first 8, Stafford the back half. Is Puka a top 10? Is he on this list?
Yeah, I think just it's so hard not to do it. And it would have to be something extremely optimistic comes out for Rice for Nakua to fall out.
I wouldn't have him, I don't think, on this list. I'd go Lad over him. I don't know what you're getting with Jimmy G. So now you're saying Jimmy G and the Davante Adams split. I think that would be enough to knock him off this list. So holding out hope for Stafford because I really think Puka's awesome and I really am scared at what's going on with Stafford's back right now.
Totally fair. All right, I'll keep us moving. Yeah. So Nakua was my 9, so we've gone over my number 10, my number 9, and down to 8. I know this is the first one where we have probably the biggest gap on our list. I have Brian Thomas Jr. at 8. And again, I think this is similar to my London argument. Just the sample size here, there are guys ahead of him who I just have seen more reps out of, more solid, extremely productive seasons. I guess there's one exception, sneak peek, I think, no surprise, we both have Malik Neighbors in our top 10. I'm not buying into the whole Brian Thomas was better with Mac Jones narrative. I think that's silly. But the presence of Travis Hunter does worry me. I love Hunter as a talent. I think he's fantastic. And I do think that even if he's on the field for offensive snaps in a limited manner, I think he's going to be on there for money downs. I think he's going to take away some pretty valuable looks. And so I do think when all of these guys are good, I would rather just take the guys with a little bit more of a proven track record and who didn't just draft a generational prospect who can eat in their target share is kind of where I netted out. And it is tough. Cracking the top 3 to 5 is a high bar, but I know you have them a little higher than I do. So I want to hear what your rationale is there other than you have them on your dynasty team.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. No, I'm kidding. Let me try to make the ceiling. I have BTJ at 4. I think he's more volatile than 2 guys I have right behind him, but I think the ceiling's higher, but the floor is a little lower. And so I decided to go with the ceiling play here. One, to create discussion. So here's what I think.
It's all for content. I like it.
No, well, yeah. All right. No, but there's a good argument for BTJ being a top 4. All right. So he finished 4th total fantasy points as a rookie, right? So his ceiling is established, like you said. A lot of that came with Mac Jones. The thing about BTJ is he didn't start the season with the snap and the route participation of what we think of as a true number 1. He had to earn his way up. It wasn't till essentially week 9, week 10, where he was seeing over 75% of snaps. And honestly, coincidentally, those are the games that overlapped with Trevor. He didn't get 10 targets until week 10. So it took them a little while to fully embrace him as kind of the stud he is. So there's a lot of meat on the bone there. Most people think the offense is going to be much improved under Liam Cohen. There's nothing scary to me in terms of target competition. So I know you said Travis Hunter. To be honest, Travis Hunter doesn't scare me one bit for BTJ ceiling. I think he's a nice complementary piece. I think he'll be used. He'll score some touchdowns, but I don't think from a volume perspective, Hunter scares me. So you combine all those things, better offense. He's going to run the routes of a true number one. He's hopefully going to get the target share of a true number one. Trevor Lawrence is going to be healthy. I think there truly is a top five. Don't want to go higher than that just to be careful, but I think the ceiling's there. I also think there is a floor possibility. Maybe he regresses from the touchdown department. He scored 10 last year. I think there's a chance that regresses. And then maybe you're right. Maybe Travis Hunter is a stud and maybe he's better. And so it's like a 1A, 1B thing, and BTA is not a full number one.
Yeah. And as much as, I have a little bit of concern, similar note for Nakua earlier. Like, these are top 10 guys. Like, you kind of got to pick nits a little bit to really be able to differentiate here. Like, we're not out on any of these guys. We're maybe a touch lower than consensus or higher on consensus than some. But, these are all still guys that we would draft with a lot of confidence. And it is just like really getting into that nitty gritty once you get this high on the list. But I know that was, let's see, we got your number 10, your number 7.
My number 9 is still on the board.
And now you're number 4. Yeah, so who's your 9?
All right. So my 9 is Nico Collins. I don't want to take anything away from Nico as a stud number 1 receiver. He's an awesome football player. He was kind of 7th and 8th, respectively, in the last 2 seasons in fantasy points per game. He was number 3 in yards per route run last year, top 10 in targets per route run last year. The thing that worries me a little, and comparatively to these other guys. So he's slightly lower in target share than what you'll typically see of the studs on this list. So last year he was at around 25%. 2 years ago he was around 23%, where a lot of these guys are in kind of the high 20s, 30s range. If you're talking about Malik Neighbors, 35 range. So I think the floor case is he's played NFL 4 seasons. He hasn't had one healthy year in those 4 years. So you combine lower target shares, hasn't been healthy yet. They're projected to have a pretty bad offensive line. So I think that a lot of the kind of secondary, the big plays that Nico can really kill you on, they might not have time to get into like they have in the past. So they could rely a little bit more on the quick stuff. So the Christian Kirk and Jalen Noel and the other guys they got in, if they have to get the ball out quickly. Not saying Nico can't do that. I'm just saying he could do a lot. And if the big plays come down a tiny bit, right, that can be the difference between like an 8 and a 10 finish over the year. But I think he's a stud. I just think he falls into the back half of this group.
Yeah. And so this is actually the one where you and I have the biggest difference on the other end. I actually have Collins all the way up at 4. And I think you outlined the pros pretty well for me already. So for the sake of time, I won't regurgitate those too much. I think you did a great job there. But for me, it's just the cons don't scare me as much. I think, one, philosophically, I tend to operate under the belief that your first round pick can't win you a championship, but it can lose it for you. And so I just really like a guy who I've seen it in the NFL. He clearly has awesome chemistry with a really good quarterback. And so, yes, I guess the injury concerns are the one area that's still a red flag. For Collins, he has, I think, missed games at least every year, if I remember correctly. So that's a little concerning, but he's entering the season perfectly healthy. And so that's a risk I'm willing to take. And then I think the offensive line concerns don't scare me as much for Collins as they do scare me about the Texans offense as a whole. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball very well at all. And so I think they're just going to be extremely pass happy as an offense. They have a quarterback in CJ Stroud, who I think operates really well in a spread it out, kind of get the ball out of your hands quick system. And so I think if anything, that could maybe just lead to more catches for Collins, even if it doesn't necessarily boost his yardage or touchdown ceiling. I think he's the clear number 1. Like, I think last year he entered the season and it was like, oh, well, Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs are really good. It's like the guys behind him on the depth chart now. I mean, yes, Tank Dell's there, but probably not a ton of reason for optimism for him to have a good year. Is 2 rookies. So I think he's going to come out as the number 1 in an offense with a good quarterback who's just going to sling the ball a ton. And he's already proven it. So I'm all in on Nico Collins this year. I feel like I'm going to draft him a lot just because of how much higher on him I am than consensus.
One more thing I think that's like the pro Nico point is I think Joe Mixon had 15 rushing touchdowns last year. So
Mm-hmm.
they're like the ratio of touchdowns through the air versus on the ground, especially with this putrid offensive line, I think will probably slide more to the passing touchdowns. And obviously that's a boost to Nico. So yeah, I like him. I just don't like him as much as the other guys.
Yeah, totally fair. All right. So we've hit my 10, 9, and 8. And now we got number 7 for me. And that is A.J. Brown. I'm an Eagles fan. I love A.J. Brown. I think talent-wise, he belongs in the top 2 or 3 conversation. But I do think, talking offensive ecosystems here, the Eagles are going to run the ball a lot. I think it'll be not quite as drastic as last year, but I think A.J. Brown is just so talented that he's going to overcome that. And so much of what he does for the offense is generate explosive plays. And talking about target shares, it's like, yes, the Eagles do have a low volume passing attack, but I think he was first or second. I don't remember. I think it was
Second.
just behind Neighbors in target share with like 34%. So it's like, okay, maybe the overall passing volume is a little smaller, but he's still going to get more than his fair share of targets. And if that overall volume of passing in the Eagles offense entirely goes up a tiny bit, 34% target share of more Jalen Hurts passes, with everything else defenses have to worry about. I just think he's like one of the best players when it comes to, he had 140 yards and 2 touchdowns this game. I think he has that in his back pocket every single game, even without a high volume. So I love A.J. Brown. It feels criminal having him this low on my list, but, again, we are picking nits here, and the volume concerns just prevent me from putting him any higher, even if they're a little bit overblown, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you had him higher than me. I had him at 8, but doesn't it kind of feel like he's the forgotten guy on this list because of the
He
injury
does.
last year?
I think everybody else is feels like a
New
young,
and
new
fresh.
name. And
Yeah.
is he the oldest guy on this list, which actually sounds kind of crazy? That was actually another thing I noticed is this is like the first time I can recall having a list of top 10 redraft receivers that I'm pretty sure would be the exact same as my list of top 10 dynasty receivers. I guess, Marv would probably sneak in there for me over some of his names at the bottom, but isn't that
Different
kind of crazy?
conversation.
Like there's normally
Lad
some Tyreek
McConkey.
Hill or
Lad
whatever.
McConkey. It is crazy. It is crazy. And I'll be quick on A.J. Brown because he's awesome. He's 8th in fantasy points per game. Not last year, but 23 and 22 with the Eagles. He had 140 targets both those years. He scored 11, 7, and 7 touchdowns the last 3 years. 7 last year in less games. Dolan already said 35% target share. The awesome part too with A.J. Brown is missing 6 games last year. He had 6 top 10 fantasy weeks. So every week he was healthy, or at least the majority of them, he was giving you a top 10 week. I think we both think Philly's pass to run ratio will regress a little, but I also think it doesn't matter for a guy like A.J. Brown. He's going to get a massive target share and he'll score 10 touchdowns and he'll be an awesome pick at the back end of the second. All right, we'll get to I think it's number 6 player is Malik the Freak Neighbors. I feel like we've done a lot on Malik in the last couple pods, so I'll try to keep this one a little briefer. Malik Neighbors was an absolute target monster last year as a rookie, so 170 total targets, number 1 target share, 6th in fantasy points per game with the worst quarterback situation in the league with combination of Daniel Jones and Tommy Cutlets. So I think with average quarterback play, I think it's safe to assume Malik Neighbors has number 1 overall receiver upside. From the positive regression standpoint, he should score more than 6 touchdowns if those target numbers stay kind of even in the range. The negative scenario is he's going to see less targets. It's a new quarterback, potentially quarterbacks plural. So that poses a little bit of a risk, and natural target regression should hit, which is why I have Brian Thomas a tiny bit over him. Mostly is because the Jags offense is going to be. I think Malik will regress. I think the Jags offense will be a little better than the Giants offense.
I think that's the one thing for me that's concerning. Is like, yes, the quarterbacks, but again, we had proof of concept last year that he can dominate with poor quarterback play. And I think you said average quarterback play. I don't think we're getting even average quarterback play out of the Giants this year. But I actually do think stylistically, Russ is probably not the best fit for Neighbors. You can speak to this. You've seen more Russ in your days than I have. But I also had Neighbors at 6. Like, I'm still drafting him extremely high. The injury concerns, because they're current, definitely scare me a little bit, but not enough to move him any lower down the list. I think you summed it up really well for Neighbors.
Would you, with the Neighbors injury, would you take AJ Brown over Neighbors?
No, I think I would still go with Neighbors unless something new comes out. It's like if I start seeing things that say, "Oh, Neighbors is at risk of missing week 1," that'll be enough to bump him down pretty quickly. But at this time, I'm sticking to my rankings here.
Yep. All right. Who do you got next?
Let's see. I think you're spot on, or same with me here.
Same.
Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yep.
And this is one that, I don't know, it just feels unexciting drafting St. Brown. I think because he doesn't have all of the explosiveness that a lot of the other names around him do. And I think, some of the concerns we've talked about, Jameson Williams or other Lions players this year, losing the offensive coordinator, offensive line taking a step back, natural offensive regression are still there. Ever since he stepped in the league, Amon-Ra's just been an absolute dude. Like, he's going to be another one of those guys who is just near the top of the league in targets. He hauls in every ball that comes his way. He's constantly open. And just you go down the line and he checks just about every single box you could possibly ask for. And like, when your only argument against him is, well, the other guys on his offense are good too, I'm all over that every single year. I guess the unfun part is his ceiling's probably a little lower than a lot of the other names on the list, especially those ranked above him, and that's probably what keeps him outside of the top 3 or so. But if I can just hang my hat on getting 15 points a game, like, consistently every week, and it feels like 12 points is your floor, like, there's absolutely no complaints here. Anything you got to add there? I feel like he's one of the most self-explanatory guys here.
I need to do a PSA for everybody who's like, oh, he's not a sexy pick, I don't want to take him in the first or second round. Take this dude in the late first and second round. Mm-hmm. He's being underrated, I think, just because of how safe it is, right? Like, people don't like safe. People like to do crazy stuff and go out and
BTJ at 4.
Exactly, right? Yes. Don't listen to me. Take Amon-Ra. I think he does have. Let's have the ceiling conversation in a second, because I think he has a really interesting ceiling, but it's just not. So basically, he's 4th in fantasy points per game the last 2 years, right? So he was 3rd in total fantasy points the last 2 seasons. So I think he's safer to be like a top 4 receiver than almost anyone not named Chase and CD on this whole list. But he's like less certain to be the number 1 overall receiver and outscore the second guy by 100 points, right? Like, if BTJ put up, or Neighbors put up 325 and was the number 1 overall receiver, right? I would be less shocked than if Amon-Ra did that. But if Amon-Ra scored 270 points, he played every game, and he was the number 3 overall receiver again, that's just what he's going to do. And I think it's a really interesting conversation. I mean, he's 3 straight seasons, over 140 targets, 105 catches, back-to-back 10 touchdown seasons. Every single year he's played 16 or 17 games. So I think he's a lock, and I think that bores people, to be honest with you.
Yeah, he just feels like the safest bet there is. Like, I agree. His ceiling is like, he's probably not going to be the wide receiver 1, but his floor is like wide receiver 8.
Yeah, but even higher than that. It's like wide receiver 5. Like, he's going to finish between wide receiver 3 and wide receiver 5, I think.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And I think people are underrating him, me included, right, for that reason. And so I think don't be hesitant to draft Amon-Ra.
Yeah, 100% agree. But there are still 3 names that we have higher on our list here. So who's your number 3?
All right. So my number 3 is Justin Jefferson. So I think we know what Jefferson's ceiling is. The blueprint for Jefferson this year, I think people just look to last year with Darnold, right? So he was top 3 in fantasy points per game. They had a great offense. Darnold was great. Justin Jefferson was the focal point of that offense. The coaching staff stayed the same. So what everyone's assuming with Jefferson is that J.J. McCarthy will be as good as Sam Darnold was last year. I think that's a big, big if, and that's why even a guy as talented as Justin Jefferson I have at the number 3 spot, because McCarthy's a rookie. It's going to take some time to work out the kinks. I mean, unless he comes in as Mahomes, but I think we're pricing that in with a number 3 overall ranking. But it's going to take some time to work out the kinks. This is probably the best target competition Jefferson has ever had. with Addison, healthy Hawkinson, purely pass catching back in Aaron Jones. And so that 30% target share might come down a tiny bit. And I think there's risk here between that and the quarterback that there isn't with the other two guys, which is why I have him third.
Yeah. I actually have him third too, which I think is pretty interesting. Obviously, is lower than consensus. I think consensus has him at 2, so it's not a big gap. I still think he's probably the second best receiver in the NFL on pure talent. But some of those concerns that you mapped out do speak to me as well, and I think it's less about McCarthy specifically as a quarterback. It's almost in a weird way. I think Kevin O'Connell being such a good coach kind of scares me because it does make me think he's going to keep the training wheels on McCarthy a lot. So it's like maybe he's no better or worse than what Darnold was last year, but I think the offense is probably going to be a little more run heavy. I think, their offensive line additions, the addition of Jordan Mason this offseason suggests that. And so it's just like, okay, if they are truly going to say, hey, we want to ease McCarthy into the NFL, I could very easily see a much more run-centric approach being a part of that. But that said, at the end of the day, a pretty good way to ease the learning curve is also to just throw the ball in Justin Jefferson's zip code. So I think his target share is going to remain astronomically high. It's just the overall volume of targets, similar to A.J. Brown, might be slightly more concerning than I think these next two names that we have on our list here.
Yep. I have nothing to add with JJ.
Perfect. Well, in that case, I'll go number 2 here, and I think this is the one that, is a little surprising. Again, most people have Jefferson at 2, but both James and I have CeeDee Lamb here at number 2. And I think, everything we said about Jefferson definitely still applies. Like CeeDee Lamb is one of the elite receivers in the NFL. He does now have a counterpart in George Pickens. That's probably the best number 2 receiver he's had since, well, honestly, I guess since he was the number 2, technically, back in the Amari Cooper days. And so I guess that is somewhat scary, but I don't think Dallas's defense is going to be that great this year. And I think they're going to be absolutely terrible if Micah Parsons misses any time. So I think they're going to throw the ball a ton because of not only game script, but also because who's going to run the ball on that team. So I think this is going to be an extremely high volume passing attack. We've just 2 years ago saw CeeDee Lamb finish as the overall wide receiver 1. No quarterback concerns for me. And so it's just like, when you think of what can go wrong for CeeDee Lamb, like you're really having to squint to find something. And we have seen the ceiling already.
We've seen it.
That is wide receiver 1. And, even last year when he missed a couple games, he was still elite. So I got nothing but good things to say about CD, which as an Eagles fan, I absolutely hate doing. But he's just so good. If I had to guess, probably going to lead the league in targets this year. I think it's between him or Neighbors if I had to make a bet. And so Drake London's definitely up there. But when you think of those 3 names, right, it's like the quality of targets that Lamb's going to see are significantly higher than those other 2. So I'm just all in on him this year. I think he's going to be a monster. I would draft him as high as 3 or 4, I think, in any league. So I love CD. I know you feel similarly. Anything different that you'd add?
Not different. I honestly think the bad running game is going to help him. I think they're going to use his little kind of slot stuff, his quick outs to like essentially run the ball, right? The quick 5 yards, when they aren't able to actually run the ball. As Pickens doesn't scare me at all. I think the volume as a passing attack is going to be there, that they're both going to be able to eat. And Jake Ferguson, I feel like. So those 3, I think, all should be kind of viable pieces in that offense. The only potential floor with CD is he's never really had that touchdown season that Jamar had last year. So why is that? I don't know. Maybe it's just kind of the luck of the draw. So if we're choosing between him and Jamar and Jefferson, maybe that's one thing you can point to, but I don't want to be in the business of pointing out the holes in CD Lamb's game. He's awesome. Let's talk about what you said, though. You said you'd take him 4th overall. I think I am 5 and would take the 3 running. I think I'd take the 3 running backs ahead of him, but it's really close with Saquon.
Yeah. I don't want to delve too deep into this, but I will say I think the reason I'd go as early as 3, maybe even 2, honestly, in some leagues, is because I really, really like the running backs on that 2-3 turn if you're drafting early a lot more than I like the receivers. And so it's like, okay, if I can get that stud receiver, I view, Lamb, Bijan, Gibbs pretty interchangeably at that point in the draft. It's like, give me the stud receiver. Let me get at least one running back I feel really good about being my RB1 on the next pick. and go from there. So I like the roster builds more that way. Even if I would say in a pure vacuum, I probably have CD like ranked fourth behind those other two guys.
Yep. With you. All right. Do you want to put the crown on Jamar Chase's head, or do you want me to do
No, I actually have Marvin Harris. No, I'm just kidding.
it?
Yeah, go for it. I kicked us off last time. I think a lot of what we said about Lamb is probably just the on steroids version for Jamar Chase, but let's hear it.
A triple crown last year, one of the best receiving seasons essentially of all time. Him and Burrow are in more of a rhythm than they've ever been, right? I think they're both getting better as NFL football players. His down season, like 2 years ago when he was hurt, he would have been third. He was third in overall fantasy points per game. He's never been lower than top 5, including his rookie year, in fantasy points per game. He's more versatile now. He plays more in the slot. They line him up everywhere. He's an absolute beast with the ball in his hands. The defense is awful. I think it's going to look a lot like last year, where they're throwing the ball all over the place and playing these 30 to 40-point games. The only kind of I think there will be some just natural regression with the Bengals, and especially with kind of Chase's touchdowns. But he might not end as the number one receiver, but he's the safest ceiling floor combination bet that there is, and probably should be the number one overall pick in essentially every fantasy.
Yeah, he's my overall 101, and I honestly think he's in a tier by himself. It's pretty much a no-brainer for me. I'll just reiterate everything I said about about CD applies to Jamar Chase, but he's better in every single category. I think Jamar is the best talent at the receiver position in the game. I think Joe Burrow is a better quarterback than Dak Prescott, and I think the Bengals defense is probably going to be even worse than the Cowboys. He checks every single box and like emphatically checks it. He's not just like checking the box. He's like, I'm probably the best in this box for everything, unless someone wants to say, oh, the presence of T. Higgins is going to take away from him, and I'd rather have Justin Jefferson because there's less target. I don't know. Like, he's, again, my 101. I'm not thinking hard about it. Jamar Chase is awesome.
I think the only interesting question here is he good enough? So say you have 12-team league, one quarterback. You get the choice for your draft selection, right? What pick do you want? And you can choose any pick. Do you take the 101 or do you take a different selection?
I actually like the back of I think I would rather have 101 than like anything between 2 and, let's call it a 12-team, like anything between 2 and 8, probably.
Yeah.
I would rather just be like, okay, if I'm not getting the dude at receiver, give me 2 of these guys we talked about in our like earlier part of this show. Like, if I'm starting a draft with BTJ and Nico Collins, for example, or whichever of those guys end up falling, it's like I like drafting from the back more than the front, but I don't like the middle as much. And yeah, I don't know. Where are you at? I've never been like huge on the 101. I always think it's overrated. I think when people are like, "Oh, you got the first pick, that's awesome." I never really got that. Like, some years, yes. Like I think some of those peak CMC years, it was like pretty obvious this guy's a whole different tier from everybody else. But I don't know.
A lot of those guys were hurt with the injuries. I actually had this selection, which is a lot of the reason I thought of it. I took 3 overall because I wanted Bijan. I thought Bijan was my second ranked player. I thought I could get him at 3. And I thought, okay, I can get a little earlier in the kind of second. And so I went with 3 to get one of those top guys and then come back with Lad McConkey. See, my ideal is if AJ Brown falls there. It's like right on the cusp. And so that I start Bijan, AJ Brown, I think would be awesome. But
yeah, that'd be
all
a
right.
good start.
Yeah. Top 10 receivers. Anyone you want to talk about? You want to talk about Calvin Ridley?
No Calvin Ridley today. He was sadly not even in my honorable mentions category. But I do think he's a little slept on this year, so I'll throw that out there.
All right. Episode, I'm not going to say it. You're going to say it. Crush Fantasy Football Podcast.